Minutes, everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Move to approve.
And I'll second.
Got a motion second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Discussion and possible action on a certified survey map, 2 industrial lots, 3.19 acres and 2.59 acres, 2 outlots, and extension of Jack Road Drive west of Old 35, Northern States Power, Wisconsin, XL Energy.
This is a 6-acre area that's located just south of the proposed XL Energy Service Center at the southeast quadrant of State Trunk Highway and Old Highway 35, in between and south of Hanley Road. They're proposing 2 lots, which will be divided by the extension of Jack Road Drive. On the certified survey map, as I noted in my planner comments, they are proposing 2 outlots. Purpose of the 2 outlots is to have shared signage on each of the 2 outlots. So the lot that's abutting on Old Highway 35 can have a sign there along with the lot that's abutting on State Trunk Highway 35. That is not allowed by the City of Hudson in the industrial district, so I'm recommending approval of the certified survey map with the removal of the 2 outlots. There is also an access easement for, we're going to pursue an alternative to the sign ordinance versus doing this because we'd essentially be approving something that's not permitted by the municipal code. So they've agreed to remove the outlots at this time. If later on, there could be another way of pursuing what they're looking for in signage. With that, I'm recommending approval of the certified survey map with the condition that the plans and specifications for the street construction, restoration of, there's a temporary cul-de-sac at the end of, north end of the St. Croix Business Park East. That would be removed, that area would be restored. And then if they want to file a certified survey map, then they'll have to provide a surety of 120% of the estimated cost of the construction and restoration. Mr. Russ Kivanimi is here tonight representing XL Energy. Russ, I don't know if you have any questions of Russ in particular. Or?
Is XL okay with this?
Yeah, Tim Mossett is with me here tonight from XL, and yeah, we've discussed the comment on the signs. We're just trying to be creative to address the 2 buyers' request to have signage where they could both be on one sign. Yes, we have agreed to remove that from the CSM so that we can get the CSM approved and XL can sell those 2 lots. They have 2 buyers. They're anxiously waiting to purchase lots and build this summer. As Denny mentioned, we just request that you'd consider looking at some of the options so that the buyers could, and XL could come back and try to accommodate their request for some signage. That's not in your code. That possibly could be amendment to your code, or if we need to go for a variance.
The signage pursuit that we're potentially talking about in the B2 General Business District, you can have what's called a master sign plan where you have a subdivision that has multiple lots and you can have signage on the frontages that could include all 2 or 3 businesses where XL Energy would want to have signage on that, also combined with the 2 businesses that would, that's the alternative I'd be pursuing. That would typically, that does require a conditional use permit, so it requires a public hearing and we could control the height and so forth, but it would require an amendment to the sign ordinance. I guess in my opinion, a variance, they probably wouldn't carry the weight of a hardship to be able to get a variance in my opinion, but so that's the reason I'd rather look at amending that sign ordinance itself. We should be able to tailor that to allow some flexibility in design. We just didn't carry that master plan over to the industrial areas when we amended it previously. So I'm not assuring them of something, but certainly it's worth taking a look at.
I will move then to approve, but with the stipulations that Denny has just brought up as the guidance for this going forward.
I'll second
Got a motion and a second. All right, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Discussion possible action on a proposed amendment to Chapter 255 zoning of the municipal code for creation of a new downtown zoning district, B4, Central Business District.
In January, February, there's discussions on whether or not to create a new central business district zoning classification. The information I sent out, the first section basically is just a description, part of the ordinance under section 255-14, which generally describes what the B4 central business district is. Amendment to section 2, these are the amendments that'd be required to create the new classification. There's section 255-24 permitted uses. There's a chart that has permitted uses under the B3. I'm essentially, there's probably about 25 or so uses that a lot of them are going from some form of permitted use to not permitted, because these land uses would now be close into residential areas. In the dimensional requirements, the density for multifamily would be the same. Front yard setbacks would be the same, except for adjacent to residential properties. The setback would be 10 feet. And off-street parking, we did receive the study in which you were, a copy of that study was provided to you. The recommendation for that is for any new construction in the central business district, where I'm suggesting that be carried over this, they'd be required to construct half of the required off-street parking. And Karen Nessett, there was a note from Karen to me in regards to some of her concerns that was relayed in the packet. She's here tonight also. I know, Karen, if you got any comments or, okay, please.
Good evening. I'm Karen Nessett. I live at 727 3rd Street. As Denny said, he gave you my comments, and mine were quite specific because of something that's going to take place potentially on my block. I'm going to address my comments to be a little bit more general today. I guess I ask that you think about what would be all right in your own neighborhood on your own block. I'm not naive about how valuable commercial property is to the city, but if the intent of this is to really be protective of the neighbors who live in the neighborhoods where commerce might come in, I ask that you think about things like traffic. We're in a unique position in that the 2nd Street side of our block has no ingress off the street for cars, so all traffic would come through our alley. So that's cars, that's service vehicles on a regular basis. So I have asked that you consider only office use, only Monday through Friday, no retail, nothing that brings in weekend or evening traffic, in order to maintain the sense of a neighborhood where there might be children playing, or you don't want strangers in there every day of the week, 24 hours. I'd ask that you'd consider that, and consider very strongly that it just be office. And also that you consider things like lighting and signage and those kinds of things that would impact on the nature of a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
In regards to Karen's comment, in regards to no retail or no weekend, and we don't restrict. I mean, I have included retail. I think the question for, I mean, if we're gonna go purely to office, we have an office district. You know, we already have that. The purpose of this district is allow some growth of the commercial area, hopefully trying to mitigate the impacts on the residential areas as much as possible. I don't know how the city can restrict no weekend businesses. I mean, if we had a number of businesses that require a conditional use permit, and we're trying to, you know, tailor that to mitigate things, we could do it through a conditional use permit, but basically, we've tried to eliminate as many of these businesses that may have some kind of traffic, you know, higher traffic. You're not gonna eliminate traffic altogether. Even if office, you may have some truck deliveries and so forth. And no retail, no weekend, I don't know how you're gonna build that in. I mean, you could build a no retail, just simply say retail is not permitted. But if you're gonna do that, we might as well not even do this and just go purely to the office district. And no weekend, I mean, I think a lot of this is gonna end up being office, which most likely, you know, your busy times are gonna be, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. And a lot of times these offices are closed on weekends unless there's just 1 or 2 individuals that are going in and working. So I mean, I cannot recommend no retail, no weekend considerations.
I understand your comments, though, because the geography of that land is not the same as everything else with that retaining wall and the access only via the alley. That does throw a curveball at this a little tiny bit because, I mean, you drive down Second Street, there's a 10-foot, 8-foot high retaining wall. So to get into these places, I concur with your statement. It has to be the alley unless they change the whole front of that. However, I understand what you're saying. And I would just think that is a natural deterrent from any type of business that would have people going in and out of it because of the geography. I would hope that's the case, but I don't know. My thinking or comment of where you are and what you're talking about, I'm in the same canoe.
So is this, I mean, I just get a little concerned if we expand out a little bit. I mean, just when you drive down Second Street, and there's a lot of opportunity on Second Street for businesses right now. You know, so, I just don't know how that, if, you know, as we kind of spread out more, what that does to the core of downtown.
I don't think it has an impact.
I don't either.
I don't think it impacts it a bit. If I understand the proposal correctly, the regulations would pretty much narrow it down to the types of neighbors or the types of businesses that you would want in that kind of a setting. You can't have a beautician going in, or a beauty shop that would generate traffic, but you could have an architectural firm, you could have the expansion of the business that's currently wanting to. It's going to continue to have that pressure and continue to want to move out. And I think our opportunity now to come up with a set of regulations that allows it to take place in a fashion that has the least amount of impact on the adjoining neighborhoods. I think it can be done well, that it won't be detrimental to the neighborhoods. I mean, when I look at everything that is not allowed in there, that takes care about every concern that bubbles up in my consciousness about what would be a possible bad neighbor, bad situation, I guess, for lack of a better word, to have an impact on the quality of life of the neighbors around there. And I think that pretty much keeps them all out.
The lot size and just the geography does that also.
Yeah.
I mean, just physically, it only allows certain types of things to go in there, I think.
I'm kind of wondering what could go in there besides an office?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right, that's what I mean. You look at it and say, what else would work here?
And we have an office already. We have an office zoning already, right?
That's correct.
So if we have an office, does that then exclude what we're trying to do here? I mean, or do we include that in this, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
I don't think Ron Weller's office across the street from you guys over there had with Alex Cosa being there all those years, had an adverse impact on the quality of life of all the kids who grew up in that neighborhood.
You think
That's
it
an
did or
office.
did not?
It did not.
Oh, it did not.
Other than maybe kept the kids maybe a little bit more in the straight and narrow because there was more people watching what they were doing. But it used to be gas stations.
Once again, that's an office.
May I also
But it's not in the office part.
May I also make another comment? That example, that's on the edge of Vine Street. It's not in the middle of a block. It's not, so there's neighborhood all the way past that. I mean, all the business is really right there on Vine at the edge of that block, not somewhere in the middle, which potentially could happen with this kind of an ordinance, with this kind of a zoning category, excuse me.
Used to be 4 neighborhood grocery stores between here and North Hudson. You know?
You got me on his back.
No, I just mean, I think it can be done in a way that doesn't have an adverse impact, and we're gonna continue to see the pressure come, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
No, I don't. And those wouldn't require a conditional use permit for each lot or anything like that? I mean, if it's just zoned a certain way, I mean, then they can just go in and,
I've never, there's certain uses I believe should be approved through a conditional use permit. But to legislate uses purely through a conditional use permit, I'm not in favor of.
But I think we really need to establish the district that we're going to have this in. You know, the best example of a bad example that comes to mind for me is Grand Avenue in St. Paul, where all what had been attempted to keep residents along the residential part of Grand Avenue all turned into retail shops and stores and offices and everything else to totally change the character of the rest of those neighborhoods. So how far down Second Street would we want this to go? Where, how far do we want this to encroach and where?
And do you want to think about this some more, or what do you?
I think so. I'm not,
I
I'm
do
not
too.
prepared to say yes to something or vote for something yet.
the other thing that I see happening, to tag along Pat's comment, is then single-family housing becomes apartments or other things, and you lose your neighborhoods, and you lose, then you get people coming and going all the time, and you have different things. That typically is what happens, is once a business goes in, the status of the land around it changes too, because of the value and maybe the longevity of it, but a family typically won't live there. So yeah, I think we need to think this through a little bit more.
I looked at Christensen Creative going in where, the old Episcopal Church, a great tenant and
Right.
neighbor to have in the neighborhood. There are some kinds of businesses that I think we could allow to go into some parts of the community where they wouldn't, but down here, that's not gonna have an adverse impact if it's the right kind. But boy, like your concern, the wrong kind can forever poison the porridge.
So what's your pleasure then?
I think we need more time.
I think so
We're
too.
gonna do something with it.
Right.
Then I'll make a motion to postpone this, to a future date, next meeting or whenever it's appropriate.
that a motion, or?
That is a motion.
Second.
So,
A motion to
is-
postpone.
Is the next meeting enough time?
I don't know that.
The 28th?
All right, so what information do we need before the next meeting? Of course, probably we need a couple more eyes on it, huh? We got Randy and Kurt.
Yeah.
I think we need.
Well,
boundaries.
send me
I
your.
need, yeah, I was gonna say map boundaries of where we want it. Or not, Denny, isn't
We
it?
can, yeah, we can do that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
I think that would be a critical, for
And
me anyhow, it would be a critical decision-making piece of information of,
In the parking, just clarity for me in terms of,
Mhm.
you know, the off-street, you know, parking.
Didn't didn't the suggestions include developing off-street for 50% or something?
50% of required parking
Yeah.
for new construction.
Yeah, a map would be visual for me, which would help me to
Mhm.
just see exactly the area we're
Yep.
talking about.
Yeah.
We have a second on the motion to
I
postpone?
seconded that, yes.
Okay, motion a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
aye?
Opposed? Motion's approved. Anything else? Anybody?
Next meeting is Tuesday, March 28th.
Okay. Motion?
I move to adjourn.
Motion a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.